With the promise of granting any wish, the omnipotent Holy Grail triggered 3 wars in the past, each too cruel and fierce to leave a victor. In spite of that, the Einsburn family is confident that the 4th Holy Grail War will be different, namely with a vessel of the Holy Grail now in their grasp. Solely for this reason, the much-hated Magus killer, Kiritsugu Imiya, is hired by the Einsburns, with marriage to their only daughter Irisveal as binding contract. Kiritsugu now stands at the center of a cutthroat game of survival, facing off against 6 other participants, each armed with ancient familiar and fueled by unique desires and ideals. Accompanied by his own familiar, Saber, the notorious mercenary soon finds his greatest opponent in Kirei Kotomine, a priest who seeks salvation from the emptiness within himself in pursuit of Kiritsugu. Based on the light novel written by Gen Urobuchi, Fate Zero depicts the events of the 4th Holy Grail War, 10 years prior to Fate Stay Night. This anime was recommended to me by Abi and Rising Sun Reviews, and Fate Zero is an anime that I watched the first 3 episodes in 2014, but I dropped because basically I couldn't get into it. So 4 years later, Abi urged me to rewatch this series, so I did, and upon second watch, I still found some of these things boring, I still found some of it dull and uninteresting, but it was different. I was a little bit more interested in this series because I had matured a little bit, and by episode 4, I was blown away by this anime. It was well animated, the art was photorealistic at times, and not to mention the characters were awesome. Ryder, Saber, and Archer are characters that are incredible and easily some of my favorite characters in anime right now. Especially top number 1 waifu, Saber and Ryder. Fate Zero is from Ufotable, the people behind such franchises like the Fate series, but they've also dabbled in other things like the anime adaptation of some Tales games. As for Fate Zero, it spans 2 seasons, which this is a review of both seasons added into just one review, and is, because of this, 25 episodes altogether. Season 1 was released in fall 2011, and Season 2 was released in spring 2012. And both of these seasons are directed by, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, but A. Aoki, who has directed anime like Gare Zero, which I owned a Blu-ray of, Aldnoah Zero, and of course, the greatest anime ever, Girls Bravo. This anime is also based off the light novel of the same name by Takashi Tekuichi and Gen Urobuchi. With Fate Zero, you may initially think it to be boring or just your basic action anime. Well, you would be completely wrong, as Fate Zero is so much more complex than it lets on. Fate Zero is a battle of ideologies, and it's not as simple as just good or bad either. You have the clash of characters and story that creates this series, and because of it, it stands atop the corpses of pretty much every other battle royale anime like it, or even action anime like it if you want to go that far. This series is complicated and full of depth in the best of ways possible, and that's because everything in this series works like a well-oiled machine. The only negative things I can think of is the first 3 episodes, which are just kind of boring, to be honest. Now, these episodes do have impact and important things happening there, but it's just a lot of talking that isn't all that fun to watch. Besides that, the rest of the series is an amazing ride, but I wouldn't say it's fun at times. The series brings the darkness just as much as it brings anything else to the table. If you're one of those people who are turned off by dark and gritty anime, then this one, it may not be for you. As for comparisons to Fate Stay Night UBW, Fate Zero is a huge departure, as this series is much more dark and mature compared to its sequel. This is much less shonen and fun-time romance, and more expansive character development and building and clashing of different ideologies. It's also much more violent and dials back the fights in comparison to what we see in UBW. In UBW, as an example, we get these epic fights which are the culminations of our characters, while in Fate Zero there is always a sense of dread or this heavy feeling with the fights. This is because at any of these moments, the characters can believably die or lose the war. Not only that, but the series isn't afraid to show some pretty gruesome deaths that really layer on the price of fighting for the Holy Grail. The show just isn't as lighthearted as UBW is, and that to me is what makes Fate Zero the most unique of the Fate series. I wouldn't have the series be any other way, to be honest, either. I think this more mature vibe to it is what gives it its own personality, like how UBW has its own feel and personality to it. Generally, when talking about Battle Royale anime, there are certain questions that arrive, like, for example, what is it they are fighting for, and is it worth the fight? Well, in Fate Zero, they are fighting for one of the Holy Grails, the fourth one to be exact, which can grant them any wish they desire. So, is it a good motivation for the story? Yes. Yes, and this is because it's incredibly powerful. When you also take the ideals of each of the servants and masters, you have this terrific combination, which makes for an incredible story. It's probably one of the best Battle Royale anime ever. I can't really think of any others that can hope to touch its story and quality, so don't be afraid to watch this because it's technically a Battle Royale. Trust me when I say it's going to be one of the best experiences you'll have with one, undoubtedly. Fate Zero's characters are incredible. That's the best word to describe them. Every single one of them are characterized and developed to these extreme lengths that not many other series can do. Typically, most anime have problems with either making their characters totally omniscient or just outright dumb. Zero has characters that are incredibly smart, some deceptive, some who want to fight Bill Clinton, some who are lawful good like Saber, or downright evil and manipulative. There is a gambit of characters with their own personalities and traits which make them all incredibly important to the story and the Battle Royale itself. Ryder is just as important as Lancer and vice versa, as an example. Even the human characters are interesting, with even the most mundane of them being incredibly entertaining and well written. Even the backstory on characters like Kiritsugu are incredible and are personally my highlights of the series as a whole. Alright, so if I'm allowed to nitpick one thing, and it's maybe not a nitpick for some, but you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Saber is likely the most meh out of every character in Fate Zero, or really just the whole Fate series if you want to go that far. Now, I don't mean that she is a bad character, but what I'm trying to say here is that every other character besides Saber is a 10 out of 10, while Saber is at her best an 8 out of 10, and at her worst probably a 7. And I'm not rating her on her looks, but specifically how her character develops and what she brings to the story. Maybe some of her looks. Now, this does actually somewhat play into her character in the story, as her ideals are somewhat obvious for her character. As much as I love Saber, it does pain me to say that because she has consistently some of the best fights in the series and is the face of the Fate franchise at this point. She has appeared in just about every Fate series, and while I wish for her to be more than what she is at this point, I also feel like this is the best place for her character. She's the middle ground. She's the lawful good of the series, if you will, and she plays the role perfect. The Fate series has always had this specific look to it that I've appreciated ever since I started doing anime reviews in 2014. I just like how modern the series looked and felt. It reminded me a lot of the Cowboy Bebop series and other 90s animes, which went for the more grounded and realistic tone that I have always had a fondness for. Now, that being said, this anime does have a lot of magical elements, but while these elements are there and mostly prominent in Season 2, I do feel like it never gets in the way of this modern tone that it was going for. So you won't have to worry about things getting too outlandish, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And as for the backgrounds for this anime, when I was watching Season 1, the one thing that immediately popped out for me was these incredible designs for the backgrounds. A city street that Rin Tosaka wanders through, you will see things that are there in this city that are things that make it a city. It isn't vacant or has this untouched look to it, like visual novel animes do usually have. It's a very gritty and worn down look to it that you'd associate to a city. The designers of this show really knew what they were creating here and did an incredible job throughout the whole show, really just designing the backgrounds and making sure everything looked and fit this modern tone they were going for. It's a little bit more varied in terms of locations and color palettes even. In Season 2, there are a lot of episodes dedicated to Kiritsugu's past, and the setting is some kind of tropical island setting, and these episodes left an impression on me because they looked so different than what we saw before. But that's not only because of the color change, it was more about the village Kiritsugu is in. Each little shack had their own little touches to them. Each house was a little bit worn down, as well as there were paths that people took throughout the village. Season 2 helped really show the variety of Fate Zero off, and I appreciated that a lot. But before we move on to animation, I want to talk about character designs, and of course, you can't not mention mention some of the best looking characters in the Fate series, which is every single character in this show. Oh my god, these characters have some of the best designs in anime like this. I mean, Kiritsugu looks fantastic. Emiya looks fantastic. Saber? Try to give me 3 reasons Saber's design isn't freaking awesome. I bet you can't. And Archer? I love the way Archer looks. Archer's amazing. So is Lancer. I thought Lancer actually was probably one of my favorite characters by the time I got done with this series. In my opinion, there really isn't a bad character designs. There are kind of character designs that are a little bit more normal, but even then, it kind of fits the characters, so in a way, it helps to, I guess, more humanize some of these masters, which is a bonus because these masters are, for the most part, sometimes regular people that have figured out how to do magic. But as a whole, the character designs for Fate Zero honestly are probably some of my favorite designs in all of the series that I've seen so far. Granted, I've only seen Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night UBW, but I will be watching more, hopefully, because this Fate series is freaking awesome. But as for the character designs, nothing to worry about here. Saber's top waifu number 1. Fate Zero has easily some of the best animation and CGI I have ever seen in an anime. As an example, I like to bring up the scenes in the series where driving is involved. These scenes look so detailed and beautiful and are almost photorealistic at certain times. At first glance, I thought it was bad CGI and animation, but it's so good I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and upon further viewing, I realized for an anime that came out in 2011, it's probably not only one of the best looking anime from its day, but also one of the best looking anime that has held up from that time period. And we can't forget about the action scenes of this series too, because it's also incredible and some of the best action in anime, once again, I've seen. Obviously, the clips and screenshots you've been seeing is from episode 4, which is when the first major fight happens. And of course, it's so detailed. Sparks flying off weapons, the mist which keeps Saber's blade hidden, even Ryder's dramatic entrance. These things are so detailed, and I can't imagine how much work went into creating these scenes. But as well, everything else in this series, it's just animated to excruciating levels that I can't find another comparison for in anime right now. Maybe Violet Evergarden? There is just no other anime like this one in my opinion. And believe me, it's not over animated either. Everything in terms of animation is all a fine balance. There wasn't really a moment where I felt something was overdone or underdone either. It was all well paced and choreographed, and I absolutely could not keep my eyes off this anime at times. If I were to have a list of anime ranking best animation, well, this anime and some select Miyazaki films would top that list. The score for Fate Zero is done by Yuki Kajiura, and if you don't already know who she is as an anime fan, well, she did the SAO score. I mean, do you need any more than that? In case you do, I'll go on. She also scored Princess Principal in the Doc Hack series, and in recent days has actually left her former talent agency to, I assume, be a free agent. Going back to her work on this anime, I don't think I've ever criticized any of her work as being bad. Sure, she has some moments of sounding uninspired, but Fate Zero is not one of them. I would go as far to say that the Fate Zero OST is a must-own, just like the Fate Zero anime. The score in this series is incredibly immersive, especially with Season 1, as I feel the season explores what the score can do more than I'd say in Season 2. And I say this because Season 2 is where all of the action happens, so the score is a lot more one note. If I can describe the two scores for each season in one sentence, Season 1 is more emotion with sprinkles of exciting score, Season 2 is more like UBW, but also has some of the best of what made Season 1 score so special. I think it goes without saying that Fate Zero has great music, but let's also talk about some of these opening and endings because, oh wow, I'm not exactly a big fan of Lisa or Air Oi, but they kill it in the opening and endings for this anime. Both of them were a must-watch every time I watched an episode of this show, and I think this goes without saying for most of the people who are a fan of Fate. But I've also come to learn that the Fate series seems to always have some of the best opening and endings in anime, and they keep being consistent with it. But then again, I could dispute that with Brave Shine. And yeah, I can hear keyboards typing away. I just don't like the song. The opening is good though, just not the song. The dub for Fate Zero is a Aniplex of America dub, and to be honest, I'm not too familiar with their dubs, but Fate Zero has an amazing dub, and I haven't watched any of it in Japanese, so I will not compare the two in this video, but I can say the dub is amazing and an absolute must-watch. The dub cast is just awesome. I mean, you have David Vincent as Gilgamesh, Carrie Walgren as Saber, and motherfucking Matthew Mercer as Kiritsugu. And, as a bonus, Grant George is in this, who originally played played Gilgamesh in the old Fate Stay Night. If this cast listing isn't enough, and these clips aren't enough, well then, you just have a different opinion, friend. Final rating time. I still can't believe I originally passed up this anime. It's easily one of the best anime out there today. Even though it's from 2011, this anime looks incredible and puts many anime out today to absolute shame. But even the story is amazing and is rich with detail and depth. Just talking about the ideologies of each character would take me multiple videos to fully grasp and even understand. And I don't even understand half the things I already saw in this series, and it's been like a month since I've seen this series. If there is one thing this anime did, it made me a Fate fan for life. Fate Zero gets a 9 out of 10. So if you enjoyed the review, make sure to give it a like and all that stuff, and subscribe and hit the bell button. Thank you all for watching this review. Fate Stay Night UBW will also be reviewed. This will also be coming out next month, so stay tuned and subscribe to not miss that one. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.